Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. I guess it's good afternoon for me, but it's still a good morning to you all. My name is Terry Chavis. I am the Director of Multicultural Affairs here at High Point University in High Point, North Carolina. And so today I'm going to be talking about Indigenous practices in modern education. So that's me. And I can go ahead and share my screen now. Okay, awesome. Yeah, let me share my screen so that you all are able to see it. There it is. Okay. And then there we go. All right. Are you all able to see my screen now? Okay, great. So, title of this presentation is Native in a Foreign Land, Indigenous Practices in Modern Education. So we're going to talk about Native culture or Indigenous culture. And also it co-aligns with Native American Heritage Month, which is the month of November. So happy Native American Heritage Month, everyone. All right, so with every presentation that I do something called a land acknowledgement. And it is to acknowledge the land that we are on. Typically for me, I acknowledge the land that I am on here at High Point when I'm giving presentations. But you all, where you all are in Texas, there are several tribes who are involved or who have ancestral territory there. So six of them. So you've got the Caddo Nation that's in Oklahoma, but their territory was part of North Texas as well. The Comanche Nation, the Kiowa, Delaware, Wichita Nation. So if you're ever out and about and you're wondering who was here prior to colonization, it was within the centuries one of these six tribes kind of on the territory that you all are on. So acknowledging the land and the ancestors of the land that you all are on is pretty cool to me. Now, I'll tell you just a quick thing. I've already really introduced myself, but I want to let you all know that I'm more than just a shirt and tie behind a computer screen. I want you all to know that I am a real person. So this is me. Again, my name is Terry Chavis. I'm a member of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina. So it is located in the southeast region of North Carolina. We are the seventh largest tribe in the nation, largest tribe east of the Mississippi River. So we're a pretty big tribe. We are not a federally recognized tribe. We are a state recognized tribe, and we're going to go over that later on, what the difference between the two means. In the top left is my alma mater. So in undergrad, I was a biology major, laboratory science. I was chemistry and pre-medicine minors. And then top right is my graduate school. I went to Western Carolina University where I got my master's in education for higher education. So working with students at college is my job every day. And in the middle left, I worked in residence life for about 7 years. 3 of those years was at Eastern Kentucky University prior to me coming here. So that's a little bit of history for me. I got history in the natural sciences and biomedical sciences as well as residence life. So all right, so let's dive right on in. What do I want you all to get from this presentation? What do I want you all to learn? What do I want you all to step away from this presentation and have? One, I want you all to know the historical concepts of native challenges, what natives have had to overcome throughout the centuries, and how we are here today in modern America in the pursuit for inclusion and equity. I also want you all to be knowledgeable of the different practices among regions in North America. One of the stigmas is that all Native Americans are alike. We are not alike. There are many, many, many tribes, over 500 tribes in North America. And so we all have different practices, and we'll talk about that. And then I also want to talk about some implicit bias, microaggressions, and cultural appropriations of Indigenous culture. Usually I'll talk about that right before Halloween, because that's usually when you see cultural appropriations, but we'll talk about that as well at the end. So that's what we're going to learn from this presentation here today, y'all. All right, so what I want you all to do, I need this from you all, and I think I can put it in the chat. What I want you all to do is text this number, or you can just respond to the link that I'm about to provide you in the chat. And I want you to say, what is it that you know about Native culture? What's something that you know about Native culture? So let me figure out how to chat here. There we go, and I'm gonna put a link. So if you want to click that link, oh, well, I'm sending that to you, Naile. If I can just send it to everyone, my apologies. click this link on your computer and then just type out whatever you think, whatever comes to your mind when you think of Native culture, Native American culture. Okay. Okay. And it should be activated now, so you should be able to click it. So we'll do a live feed here shortly. Yeah. Yeah, I'm seeing some things of, so let's click on here, see if there's any responses. Are you all able to click the link that's in the chat? Okay, yeah.
Yes,
and so
I
just
can.
type out. Okay, so yeah, just type whatever you think of Native culture. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Okay, okay, so TPs, yeah. What else? Oh, Eagle. History. History, let's see. Should be more of a K-12 system. Eagle, history, forgotten history, often forgotten history. Okay, owners of the land, K-12. Lost history. Yep, yeah. So history, whether it's lost history or ingrained history, or rich history, history of systemic oppression is, I'm seeing that on there. So yes, yeah, we're going to talk about the history of Native culture, and that's actually one of the first things we're going to dive right on into. Okay, so good. Thank you all for participating in that. All right. So, who is this? If you want to just put it in the chat box, who is this? Anybody want to take a guess of who this is?
Christopher Columbus?
Yes, you are right. Okay. Christopher Columbus, some would say that he discovered something when in actuality he was lost. He discovered nothing. So, Christopher Columbus, historically and even to this day, with America trying to figure out the holiday, the name of the actual holiday in celebration. So Christopher Columbus came over. We Native Americans throughout history and even to this day, and natives remind themselves or say this about themselves as well, are called Indians. Anyone want to take a guess as to why Christopher Columbus called us Indians?
Because he thought that he had gone to the Indies.
Yep, there you go. See, look, thank you, appreciate it. Awesome. Yeah, he was searching for spices. Thought he was over there in that area, and he was like, okay, cool. This is the people that will have all the spices for me. I'm going to call you Indian because this is the land that we're in. Little did he know he was not. He was way off track, way off course. And kind of history followed after that. Colonization, wars happened, and then the American government, American Revolution, and then the American government was established. And so you then got these indigenous folks who have been here for thousands and thousands of years, and now you've got new folks, new culture that has embedded itself here. And so there's this contrast between the two. As we know, most history books talk about that. So we get to the American government. Who is this?
Andrew Jackson?
It is Andrew Jackson. Yes, thank you. Okay. I put the tense stuff at the beginning of my presentation so we can kind of wean off of it towards the end. But yes, so Andrew Jackson was another essentially revolutionist who strategically removed Native Americans from their land. And how was he able to do that? Well, he was the seventh president of the United States. He was the one that enacted something called the Indian Removal Act of 1830, which led to what we all know as the Trail of Tears, which kind of came over to the area that you all are in, or that you all inhabit right now. So looking at this, in the top left, this is the Senate. So the American Congress passed a bill that essentially said Native Americans are going to be removed to the west of the Mississippi River. And the reason why they were removed, for many reasons, but why is it that they were moved instead of kept in their land for slavery and things like that? So they moved over because the colonizers or the American people wanted that land to inhabit for, especially in the Mississippi region, for cotton and for major production of goods to supply the world. And so they needed that land in order to become the most competitive and the most dominant nation at that point, or colonies in the world. So they moved Native Americans over, forced Native Americans over. So the bottom right talks about the Trail of Tears. So you all, it's mainly in Oklahoma. That's why you see such a large concentration of Native Americans in Oklahoma and the Texas region, North Texas region, things like that, is because of the Trail of Tears. Now, this just shows the southern region of the United States, but there were natives who were up in the Great Lakes regions and the Plains regions that kind of got brought down as well. And a lot of indigenous people died during the Trail of Tears, and because of that and the harsh conditions that they lived in for so many years, the population wasn't able to rebound as quickly as other populations in global history may have been able to. But we're still alive and thriving today. About 2% of the US population are Native American. So we're still alive and thriving even after these historical events. So because of this, and Native Americans being in the more impoverished communities, it's been a struggle for Native Americans to kind of get an education, to go outside of the tribe and really be productive and contribute to society. And so this has, this act happened, that was 180 some years ago, and the effects are still being felt today because of reservations in those areas, putting in on natives trying to live on soil that was barely able to grow anything. And so still feeling the effects to this day, but thankfully Native American populations are thriving or rebounding. We were hoping that this current census, the 2020 census, would show a major increase in Native Americans in the United States, but we don't know how that's going to look right now because of the pandemic. So we may not have an accurate number until the next census 10 years down the road. Okay. So that's the negative stuff. Those are some of the barriers that Native Americans have had to overcome. There's plenty of presentations that talk about health disparities and things like that in the United States. But I want to talk to you all about the exciting part of my culture here today and some modern practice I want you all to know. One big thing that I want you all to know is about recognition. And what does it mean for recognition? There is two things. There's something called state recognition and federal recognition. And so in order for a tribe to be federally recognized, they have to go through something called the Bureau of Indian Affairs, so the BIA. They will review the tribe's lineage and demographics and kind of determine if that tribe is federal, is an actual Native American tribe, and then they will pass that over to the U.S. Congress. And so if the U.S. Congress votes on it, then they're a federally recognized tribe. All federally recognized tribes are also state tribes. So the state Congress votes on state recognition, and then if a tribe wants to become federally recognized, they go through the BIA and it gets to the U.S. Congress. Okay. So continuing on, looking at the next one. So why is it so important for federal recognition for Native Americans? Well, because federal recognition helps with those necessary items for survival: housing, elderly assistance, medical assistance, monetary benefits, and sovereignty. Sovereignty is probably one of the most well-known things about Native culture. Sovereignty, they become their own government, they govern themselves. So it's a nation within a nation. So when you hear about Native tribes in your area or across the nation, or across the country, and they say the Saponi Nation, or they say the tribe and then they call it a nation. So for us, it's the Cherokee Nation over here, the Eastern Band of Cherokee. And that means that they are a sovereign tribe. It means that they govern themselves. They have their own government that kind of helps assist all members of the tribe. So it's like the United States government kind of condensed down into just a tribe of 60,000 people, 100,000 people, just a small amount. Now, these are very important. I mean, housing, as we all know, housing is very important. Living in decrepit housing with not enough fuel or resources really amplifies the detrimental health effects on the culture. Elderly assistance, one big part of Native culture is respect for elders. So our elders are sacred to us in Native culture. So my grandparents, they are the head of the entire family. You don't do anything to disrespect your grandparents at all, point blank, period. That's a game over move right there. So it's important that we make sure that our elders live as long as they can so that they can continue to provide the wisdom. To me, I learn every day or every time I go home to my grandparents, I learn something new. My grandfather is phenomenal. Monetary benefits. So again, Native Americans are the most impoverished populations in the United States. My hometown of Pembroke, North Carolina, the average household income is $17,000. So it's well below the poverty line. So growing up I'm a first generation college student. I grew up in a very low income household. And so it's hard for Native Americans to make it in society. So another barrier, or real quick, I want to jump back to a barrier that Native Americans face. I probably should have put it slide before this. It's something called imposter syndrome. So I will use myself as an example, personal example. So growing up in a poverty or a low income household, college really wasn't a thing because you stay at home, you go and get a job as a construction worker or brick masonry, or you work at the factory or plant or something like that. You don't really go to college because it's too expensive and you may not make it. I chose to go to college instead. I'm the only member of my family and extended family that went. Now, something that came with that is something called imposter syndrome. When folks who immerse themselves into a culture that they are not familiar with at all, the rigor increases. They kind of feel like they're an imposter because I asked this question to you all. Have you ever felt when you get into a room, if you're in your classroom or you're on campus or anything like that, or in high school, or you go somewhere and you're like, "Ooh, do I belong here? Like, do I feel like I belong here? How did I get here?" Those are questions that folks ask, especially when they get to college. They're like, "How did I even get here? Like, I don't belong here. I feel like I'm a fraud because I compare myself to everyone else. Everyone's doing good things and I'm sitting here struggling." That's something called imposter syndrome, where they feel like they are an imposter in that situation. So for me, when I left the tribe and attended a predominantly white institution, higher education institution, I looked around and I was like, do I belong here? How did I get here? Like, was I just lucky to be here, or I'm just lucky to be in this classroom, or I'm lucky to be able to go to college? Those are some things that people say that are experiencing imposter syndrome. So remember from here on out, where if you go somewhere and you're like, do I belong here? Yes, you do. You belong wherever you go. You are trying to gain additional experiences. And when you go off to college or continue on your educational career, you belong there no matter where you go. Okay. You have the right to do that. To get an education is very important. So don't let imposter syndrome kick in. Even as a professional, I've been having to fight imposter syndrome because I look to all of my colleagues and I'm the youngest director and yet the one that is leaned on the most. And I'm like, how did I even get here? All these folks, half of these folks have doctorate degrees, but I'm still trying to overcome this imposter syndrome even as a professional. So that's another barrier that natives have to face is when they leave the tribe, they're like, do I really belong here? Is this something that I can see myself surviving in? Now, here's the fun part that I want to talk to you all about. Native Americans are different from each other. The way that my tribe practices is different than the tribe up the road, the Halawasaponi tribe practices. So we're going to talk about some regions in the United States. So let's go to the Northeast region. New York, Maine, Connecticut, Massachusetts, all those folks up there. The Great Lakes are Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, which, side note, Indiana is named after land of the Indians. That's why it's Indiana. So some tribes up in the Northeast. So you got the Aroostook band of the Mimak Indians. You've got the Chickahominys, the Pecotes. The Wampanoag, cool story about the Wampanoag, they are the tribe that made the original contact with pilgrims. So the Thanksgiving that we're about to the holiday we're approaching, the first Thanksgiving happened with the Wampanoag tribe. sadly enough, just this year, no, excuse me, last year, almost half of the Wampanoag tribe land belonging to the Wampanoag tribe was taken by the Department of the Interior to go back to federal government or for the federal government to use. And so you're like, wow, this was a tribe that made the original connection between the Pilgrims, and they're still facing detrimental effects of the U.S. government. And then you've got the Tuscarora Nation up there. So some foods that they ate and still eat up in the Northeast, so up from me, deer, fish, and vegetables were the core for the Native Americans there. This picture is of the Iroquois Native Americans, which I don't even have the tribe listed there. There's a ton of tribes. This is just some examples. So that's the Iroquois Nation. So you can see how they are dressed in the skins that they are using and the feathers that they are using there. And how they are dressed really speaks about what region they are from. And then the housing here, because there is plenty of water and forestation or forest around in the Northeast, Southeast, they lived in these permanent houses, these mound houses, or what they called here. So this is what a Native American village may have looked like in the Northeast prior to colonization. Or pre-colonization, my apologies. The Southeast, here, some of my people, the region that I am in, so all the southern states, you've got the big names down here, the Cherokee, the Cree, the Choctaw, the Seminoles, the Chickasaws, and then my tribe, the Lumbee tribe. And so we also feasted on deer, fish, and vegetables and berries we have as well. And so those were the foods that we used, again, because everything was so readily available all in one area. So the water supply was there, which meant that the fruits and vegetables were easily grown, which meant that the prey or the grazers were right there, and then the predators were also right there. So everything was there. These natives didn't have to up and move around all the time, so they stayed put in their area. My people, they're called the Lumbee, the people of the dark water is what my tribe is known as. We lived off of the Lumber River, is what it's called. So that's why we are called the Lumbee. We have stayed here for ancestral times. So that river really is ingrained in my blood. So the housing that we had is something called longhouses, and this is what it is here. And there is one last longhouse in my tribe, and it's at the cultural center. The cultural center was built around that longhouse. And so longhouses were used as housing units. They stored their meats in there. They had ceremonies in there. Medicine stayed there, healing, things like that. Everything, a longhouse was used for everything. So this is something that they lived in. If you look up, this here is a Cree native who is dancing with beadwork. Again, the feathers that they are using, hawk feathers that they are using there. They've got some coyote and deer skins on them. So let's go over to the Northwest. So up in Oregon, Washington, those areas there, Alaska, but Alaska natives kind of way up. So you've got the Tlingit is there, the Haida, the Chinook, the Tillamook, Hoopa, and the Ayats. So those are some of the tribes that were up there. Now, if you look at this regalia of this standard native, it's thicker, it's more covering because it is the Northwest. And it was colder, it is much colder up there. And so they needed thicker furs and clothing in order to survive there. The foods that they used, salmon, of course, was a main ingredient or a main food source for them. Vegetables were able to be grown, and then coastal animals, whether it be predator or prey, they were able to eat there. So the food did change a little bit. The diet it contrasts a little bit from the Eastern natives to the Western natives. And then you will see there a totem pole. Totem poles are really specific to the Northwestern tribes, because of the trees that they have up in the Northwest. And also the Southwest as well. But a lot of evergreen trees last up in the Northwest, and so they made their totem poles out of the evergreen trees there. And each tribe's totem pole looks a little bit different because it includes the animal or the importance of that tribe. And so for here, I think this is the Chinook tribe totem pole. You see there the bear, the eagle, and the salmon are on this totem pole. Those were very important to that tribe. Of course, the salmon being the main food source there, and the bear being an animal of inspiration. Okay. The Plains natives. Now, there are a lot of natives in the Plains. So think of the Midwest, all the Midwest and the Great Lakes states, the Dakotas, stuff like that. Those are the Plains natives. A ton of tribes. That's where the largest concentration of Native Americans are in the Plains. So you've got the Blackfoot, the Lakota, the Dene, the Ojibwe, the Cree, the Sioux, and the Cheyenne, and a ton more. But those were the main tribes. And the foods were the buffalo, vegetables, and berries. Now, buffalo was, of course, the main food source for these tribes. Now, the buffalo was very important to these tribes. One, if you look up at this, this is a Cree. If you look up at this Cree dancer, you can see the buffalo there, buffalo horns, bones are being used in their regalia. Very, very, very important animal to this tribe because it was their food source. The natives in those tribes used every single piece of the buffalo when they sacrificed the animal. It nourished their bodies, and it also provided shelter, clothing, and items for the ceremony. Now, one of the stigmas for Native Americans is that, oh, did you grow up in a teepee, or did you live in a teepee, or do you have a teepee in your backyard? I do not. I didn't see a teepee until I got to college, and I went to a tourist site in the Cherokee Nation just to show about cultural relevance. Teepees were only relevant or only used by the Plains natives. Does anyone know why? Anyone want to take a guess as to why those natives used teepees instead of building their houses?
Is it because there were no? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it's because they tend to move around a lot, so teepees are really easy to pick up and move around.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. Oh, y'all were so knowledgeable. Like y'all got me on a good level here today. Yes, it's because they needed to move with the buffalo. The buffalo are roaming animals. So wherever the buffalo moved to, that was the food source. You're like, bro, my food is running away. I need to pack up and run with them. So that's where teepees come from. Teepees were very important to those Plains natives. And teepees are still relevant to this day for those Native Americans. Teepees are used for ceremonies and storage. So if you go up into the Plains and you go onto a reservation, you will still see teepees. Okay. Now you all, Southwest. These are some, have you all heard of these natives around you? The Apache, the Navajo, the Pueblo, the Ute, the Oklahoma band of the Cherokee Nation. Y'all heard of them? I'm sure you all have heard of them. Yeah.
Yes.
So those are the largest tribes, the most well-known tribes. The federal government worked closely with those Native Americans. Let's think to the World War. The Navajo Code Talkers. It was because of the Navajo Nation that the Allies were able to win the war. Now, I'm not saying that it's only because of Native Americans that the world is in a more peaceful place than it would have been had the Axis had won, but Native Americans played an integral role in that. When you see a lot of when you see a lot of military helicopters or airplanes, a lot of them are named after Native American tribes because of Native Americans' help with war tactics, war strategy, again, the warriors that Native Americans were known for. So the foods were the buffalo that were in these areas, deer, antelope, they are like mule deer, antelope, or longhorn sheep, vegetables, and then irrigation was hard in these for these tribes. So they had to kind of find a water source and use irrigation. This was what their housing looked like. They built it in mounds on the side of cliffs or out of mud or anything that they could use to put a house together. So this is something that they lived in. Again, different from a teepee, different from a long house, different from a mound, anything like that. So again, it looks very different. And then up here, this is a Pueblo native. You can see a lot of their feathers come from the hawk, from grouse, prairie chickens, things like that, because those were the items that were available, the feathers that were available, okay? So continuing on, can anyone take a guess, what is this right here? Anyone? It's okay if you don't know. Usually this is what stumps people up.
I feel like I've seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the colors in like an emergency thing. I forgot what it's called.
Um, so this is called the medicine wheel. And it's not really used for medicine. It's more of a directional thing. It talks about life itself. And this is how, because Native Americans are, the core of Native American culture is you are one with the land. You are not dominant on the land. Okay. You are one of the members of the land, of nature. And it all falls in a cycle. And the creator, just as all religions have a deity of some kind, for native culture, it is the creator, the one that created the heavens and the earth and the winds, things like that. So the direction, and it changes, obviously the last or the example was more of the cross model. This is an X model, still means the same thing. So you've got north, south, east, and west. And on there it talks about what are the sacred item or sacred plants and sacred animals of native culture. What is the life cycle? What are the different nations? For me, I'm part of an Eastern nation, so I'm part of the Oriental nations or the Yellow tribes. Tobacco is very important over in the East. I'm in North Carolina. That is the core tobacco state. The largest concentration of tobacco is right down the road from my house. My parents grew up on tobacco farms. So tobacco that is our sacred plant in the East, is the tobacco. The yellow represents children. And so infants being born, starting off in life, is the yellow. That's the springtime birth. The eagle is the most important, most sacred animal over here. And then you move over into the south, so the red nations, the sweetgrass. Sweetgrass is very important to those nations. It's a sacred plant to those nations. Sweetgrass is amazing. Oh, it's so good. It represents summertime and it represents youth, so that development coming into adulthood. The West, the Black nations, sage. Sage is a sacred plant to those nations there. The bear is a sacred animal to those nations. So again, thinking back over to the Northwest tribes, the bear is very important. It represents parents, so giving back life, water. And then you go to the north, and that is the end of the life cycle. That is the white nation, the bison being the most important or the most sacred animal there, the cedar being the most sacred plant. And then that just ends the life cycle and it just starts back again. And yourself, the core of everything is in you, the creator is there in you. So the sacred plants being tobacco, sweetgrass, sage, and cedar, and then the sacred animals as well. So let's talk about the sacred animals real quick. So these are the four sacred animals, and then I want to tell a quick story about these plants here. So the turtle, the bison, the coyote, and the eagle are the four most sacred animals of Native Americans in North America. Now, why is that? Well, one, the buffalo is a very strong, steady animal. It supplies life. It supplies everything. It supplies the meat. It provides the coverage, the clothing, the items needed for ceremony. Okay, it represents strength. The turtle is another sacred animal. It is actually my tribe's sacred animal, and this necklace that I wear is carved out of deer bone. It was given to me by an elder. And so it represents homesteadiness. You stay with your family. You are family oriented. You stay kind of close to those who helped supported you in life. Slow and steady wins the race, not always trying to get ahead in life, things like that. The coyote is in there because Native Americans realized that life shouldn't be taken so seriously. You're not the most serious thing that there is in creation. The coyote represents the jokester, is that you need to go throughout life with happiness. But also it represents that there are evil and there are tricksters in the world, and we must be aware of them. And then you have the eagle. The eagle is the most sacred animal in Native American culture. To be given an eagle feather, which I have one, which you can't really see right now, was gifted to me by when I got this necklace by my grandmother for my master's graduation. To be given an eagle feather is the highest honor that someone can give to you. So it was a very important day for me to get an eagle feather. The eagle is the most sacred animal because it flies highest. It flies closest to the Creator. it represents honor, and it represents warrior, or a warrior. Okay, so it is the most sacred animal to Native American culture. And then, of course, the United States picked it or chose it as the patriotic animal that it is. But it really is. It is the most important thing. Real quick, I want to talk about these plants right here. These three plants are especially important to Eastern tribes, so Northeast and Southeast tribes. These plants are corn, beans, and squash, and together they are called the Three Sisters. And the story of the Three Sisters is that they work together to live in harmony and provide sustenance. And how is it that they do that? Well, the corn grows tall, the stalk grows tall, and then the beans grow, and they use the corn for growth, for structure, but the beans provide nitrogen to the ground, to the soil, which is food for the plants. And then the squash grows low, and because their leaves are so broad, they provide shade to the roots, and they keep the roots, they keep moisture in the soil, so it's able to give water to the plants. And with the beans giving nitrogen to the soil, that's a food source for plants. They all live in harmony with each other. So if you hear of something called Three Sister Soup, it's corn, bean, and squash. Corn, beans, and squash. Cool thing, I've worked with the dining hall here on campus, and next week we're going to have Native American lunch menu in the cafeteria, and Three Sister Soup is one of the items there. So that I'm super excited for that. But vegetable soup. So if you think about vegetable soup, it started off as Three Sister Soup. Okay. So what do all these Native American tribes are different? Let's talk about how they're similar real quick. One is pottery. Pottery was used no matter what tribe or what region they were located, because pottery comes from clay. Clay comes from the water source, the riverbed, and they were able to use it to create houses down in the Southwest, vases, bowls, things to hold items in anywhere. Every tribe has its ceremonies, but every tribe has something called a powwow. And a powwow is a ceremony, it's a major ceremony for the tribe where everyone gets together and they fellowship and they celebrate their culture. I feel so rejuvenated when I go to a powwow. There's singing, there's dancing, there's medicine is there, herbal items are there. Beadwork, the women make the beadwork, men kind of bring in the crafting items, and there are different dances, and we're going to watch a video here in just a second. But each person that dances, they make their own regalia. So all of this you see in this picture here, these items, this beadwork, this feather work, how it's draped, that person did all of that themselves. They tied every single strand, they tied every feather, they did all of the beadwork or were gifted it by an elder. They put a lot of work into this. And so they have a lot of pride in their regalia. And it represents, and they use it to represent who they are. Just as you wear your type of clothing every day. For me, it's a sweatshirt or a hoodie and jogging pants. That's my style. Really relaxed. That's what I choose. That's what I want to give off to people. I'm a chill person. And so the clothing really represents who you are. What you wear represents what you are in the cultures like this. So I really want you all, if you've never seen a powwow, I want to show you all something real quick. If this video will play. And let me know if you can't hear it. Can you hear? Okay. So hopefully that was somewhat informative of you what a powwow looks like. It really is that. There's singing, there's dancing, and then there's folks who are around the arena, and then usually in the outskirts is where there are stands set up for people who are selling jewelry or blankets or clothing or anything that they may beadwork, stuff like that. That's usually like in the background, herbal items, stuff like that. So it's just a real good time. Unfortunately, thinking of a current example, the pandemic has greatly affected all of us in this nation. Every culture has suffered greatly because of the pandemic, but we're gonna get up. We're gonna make it through one day, y'all. I know we are. But Native culture has been hit really hard by the pandemic because elders are highly susceptible to it, and that they're part of the larger of the population that has passed away. So we want to protect, again, we want to protect our elders. So we can't really be around our elders that much during a pandemic, but also because we can't gather during a pandemic, we can't have powwows. We can't rejuvenate feel this cultural rejuvenation. And it just sucks. Our tribe's homecoming is in July, and it's an amazing time. That's when a good bit of people actually make a lot of their money because they wait for homecoming to give away. I mean, to give all their stuff to make their money, and it just hasn't happened. So it has affected us a lot. So rounding out this presentation, the last thing I want to talk about real quick are the implicit bias, microaggressions, and the cultural appropriations. So these are three items here that are kind of known the most for Native American culture. So the one on the left, that's something called a roach hat. And so it's made out of whatever animal is local to that tribe or to that region. It could be buckskin or white-tailed deer, mule deer. It could be bear. It could be porcupine, grouse, whatever. It's a headwear, and that's worn by most of the dancers or those that have regalia, men particularly. It's worn by most of them. So that's important for them to have on their head because again that symbolizes what they believe in the most. Again, each animal has its own meaning in life. On the far right for that woman, she's wearing something called a headband. Now when you see the cultural appropriations that happen for Halloween costumes, it is the headband that is used, the headband and the war bonnet. We'll talk about the war bonnet in a second. The headband is used. Again, that feather is gifted to her. That feather has been gifted to her by an elder. And from the looks of it, that is either an eagle feather or a vulture feather, both of which are also important, but the eagle being the most sacred. That is gifted to her. And she had to tie that together, include that in her beadwork. And then the last one there in the middle, who is Chief Crazy Horse, one of the most well-known Native Americans. He is wearing something called a war bonnet. Now, a war bonnet is very special in Native culture. It is not worn by many people in the tribe. One, you have to be an elder, you have to be a veteran, so a warrior, or you have to be a tribal leader, so the chief. Again, Chief Crazy Horse, so he was able to wear it. I've never worn a war bonnet in my life. I don't know if I will probably ever be given permission to wear a war bonnet in my life. So when you see this when you see folks during Halloween that wear this, that's one that really gets to me the most because I'm like, you've disrespected Native American veterans by wearing that because you don't know what it's like to go through war and survive and lead a tribe. So you see a lot of this appropriation that happens around the Halloween time. But also microaggressions that are made towards Native Americans. Not all Native Americans have a language outside of English. A good bit of tribes actually lost their language because of the Trail of Tears or sickness that happened in the early 1900s. Not all of us live in a teepee. You now know the different housing options for Native Americans. We're not really good with a bow and arrow or know how to throw a tomahawk. That's just not a thing. Though the men in my family do love to go bow hunting. I don't know how to shoot a bow and arrow. I don't really tell that to a lot of people because I don't want them to judge me, but I don't know how to shoot a bow and arrow, at least my father is able to. So these are some, when Native Americans are asked these death by 1,000 cut questions, do you have your own language, or did you have a totem pole in your backyard, or do you speak to the animals? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Thank you, media, for that. So it really shows the lack of education for folks in the country and the hardships that Native Americans have had to overcome. But like I said earlier, we are thriving. We are ingrained in our heritage. We still do our ceremonies and our practices. When a Native American goes off to college like myself, we kind of have to make sure we stay centered with our tradition through staying in touch with family, going back home whenever we can, participating in our ceremonial practices at home. I've got my eagle feather in my office. I wear this necklace with me every day that keeps me grounded in my heritage. So that's ways that folks are able to have indigenous practices in modern education. So in these modern times, how are Native Americans able to survive? We find ways that we can stay tuned to our heritage. So the last thing I want you all to do, I've got 2 minutes, okay. So use this link again that I'm about to share with you all. Let me activate it. I'm gonna share it with you all in the chat. And I want you to do again what you did earlier in the chat. I want you all to tell me, what have you learned from this presentation? And this is the word bubble. So if you use a sentence or something, it'll come up as that, not the broken up word. So what is something that you have learned from this presentation? Are you able to click the link and use it? Does it work? Okay, good. Yeah, so tell me, what is something that you've learned? And we're gonna click on it so that we can see. Okay, not all of them live in TPs. Okay. The geographic locations of different tribes. All right. Let's see what else. The significance of the medicine wheel and what it represents. Yes, the medicine wheel is very important. The eagle is the most sacred animal. You've learned about their specific cultures. Wonderful. Okay. Anybody else? Misconceptions. Yes, thank you. What are some misconceptions about Native Americans? The different sacred animals and why they are so sacred. All animals, I want you all to know this, all life is sacred to Native Americans, but there are some that represent the most. The roach hat or the war bonnet is something special, and not everyone's going to get a chance to wear it. Yeah, the war bonnet, I may not ever get to wear it. Yeah, the four sacred animals, the eagle, the bison, the coyote, and the turtle. Yes, thank you. All right. So it sounds like you all have learned. You all are going to be taking something away from this presentation, and I'm very happy that you all are going to be able to do that. So let's take a minute and revisit our learning outcomes. So do you all now know some historical concepts of Native American challenges or challenges that Native Americans have had to overcome? Okay, and you all can put in the chat box or something like that, or put a thumbs up, whatever you would like to do. Yep, I see thumbs there, okay. Are you all now knowledgeable of the different practices amongst regions of North America? Yeah, see this thumbs up. And then lastly, do you all now know about some microaggressions and implicit bias and cultural appropriations towards Native culture? All right, then it looks like we've met our learning outcomes, which is phenomenal for a presentation. So thank you all, I greatly appreciate it. So are there any questions that you all have for me?
I guess it's kind of a question, and I might have missed this at the beginning. But are you employed at a tribal college?
No, I'm employed at a predominantly white institution,
Okay.
a fluent, predominantly white institution. For the East Coast, there's really, by Carnegie standards, there's only one tribal college and university on the Eastern Seaboard, and that's actually UNC Pembroke, which is my hometown. The institution there was originally started as a Native American school, and it is now part of the UNC system. So I have a lot of family members who work at UNCP and a lot of friends from high school that went to UNCP. I chose to not do that because I could walk to UNCP from my house. I said, I'm going to go and experience another part of the state. So, yeah, I work at a predominantly white institution.
Oh, okay. I was just asking because I thought I had heard it, but I might have heard wrong. And then um, I was just learning about tribal colleges this week for one of my assignments for grad school. So it was something that it actually like fit in. It was one of my discussion posts. So it was really interesting to learn about um, those particular institutions and their curriculum, how they,
Mhm.
embed cultural values like spiritual values, all those things into the curriculum, which I think is great because like as a Mexican American person, individual, we don't often, and I'm sure other cultures experience it, we don't often learn about our past, our history,
Mhm.
our ancestors, and we don't see it embedded into our curriculum, and especially K through 12 system. But you don't actually learn about certain things until you get to college.
Mhm.
And I think that that's kind of a good thing and a bad thing because it's like you are barely learning your history at age like 21 or
Yeah.
18. And then there's so much you need to learn, and it's like you're almost behind.
Mhm.
So I think it's really important for institutions to include like some sort of cultural curriculum or like a
I agree.
class, whether it's about your own culture or learning about other people's
Mhm.
cultures. I just think it makes a more open-minded individual, more tolerant, more you're able to relate to experiences. Sometimes our experiences can overlap and they're the same but different.
Yeah.
You're able to relate to people
Mhm.
and see the similarities in some of our history.
We all know about a bunch of European history and European culture. I think it's important, and especially in my area of expertise, it's important that we learn about more than just one culture or two cultures. So, yeah, thank you for that. Any other questions? I really enjoy questions. I welcome them.
I feel like the presentation was really complete, and I really enjoyed it, learning about it. So I'm not sure if I have any questions come to mind, because it was really like it taught a lot. It was a lot of knowledge.
Well, I greatly appreciate that. That means a lot. I enjoy presentations. It's one of my like I feel so warm and safe when I'm giving presentations, especially when I'm able to connect and talk about something as personal as my own culture. So, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I'm glad you learned something.
I do have a question. This is just for my personal curiosity. How much do you know? I might be saying it wrong about the Cochise people.
I don't think I know anything about them, but I'm sure I can. I've got connections who can tell me a lot about them.
Because I mean, I would like to read and learn more. Just because in a book that I was reading, I like to investigate and learn more about my culture, and I think that's one of the things for my people. We try not to accept our indigenous connection, and I feel like many people don't want us to understand that we ourselves are indigenous. So
Mhm.
the book that I read talked about the Cochise people and how the Aztecs are, the Cochise people are ancestors of to the Aztecs, and
Mhm.
the Aztecs were here in America as well before they moved down to Mexico, and
Mhm.
people talk about Aztlan and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
I would like to learn more about that, and for people to acknowledge us Mexican as indigenous as well. One day they will recognize our indigenous ancestors here in America as well. No, but
Mhm.
if you can, I mean, that'd be pretty interesting just to spark my curiosity, learn more about that culture and
Mhm.
follow the footprints.
That brings up a good point, actually, or a feedback point, because in my eyes, and when I speak to a lot of Native scholars across the nation, my mentors, our our folks in Mexico are our relatives. Like we are essentially the same people. Again, just different cultures. We just have different things are important to us, or things like that. And so, in my eyes, that's we people. You my people. I'm your people. Things like that. So that will be in addition to my next presentation if I ever talk about it. So that'll be talking about the Southwest region migrating down into the Mexico region as well. So and how a lot of those cultures are the same. If you look at how the ceremonies were designed and the importance of people and nature and things like that. So thank you. Great point. Any other questions, comments? Oh, yips.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I really like this presentation just because I had my dad's grandmother was Native American.
Mm-hmm.
So like she passed away when I was like younger, so
Mm-hmm.
we never really got to learn anything about it. And my dad lost all the language he had learned
Mm-hmm.
with his grandmother. So I think it was really interesting because in my family, everyone's lost their indigenous roots. No
Yeah.
one really knows about it, and I think it's really cool to just learn and just
Mm-hmm.
know more about it.
I
Is it
feel
Marjorie? Is that how you
Mm-hmm.
pronounce it, Marjorie? Well,
Yeah.
Marjorie, you have the perfect opportunity to bring change to your people, to your family. So use that opportunity. You've already recognized the issue there, just like with me. I recognize that my people have a lot of things to learn, and I educate my family because I go out and do the research because I've developed a passion for it. So, girl, go for it. Do it. Jesse, did you have something?
Oh, I was gonna say I feel the same way as Marjorie because I do feel like Native Americans, yes, are Mexican on that side, but on my mom's side of the family, um, they're descendants from the Cherokee tribe, but they know nothing about it. I asked about it once I had to write a paper, but there was like nothing. They didn't know the information, so it was like nice hearing it right now, like a bit of just a little tiny piece, I imagine, of like what the whole topic
Mhm.
would be. So.
Yeah, I'm giving you all baseline information here, like important items to know about Native culture. But yeah, you really will need to immerse yourself. But go out. This is your generation, my generation are all about social media, about online learning. We are the smartest generations ever in history. So we need to use this privilege that we have of education, of being educated, to educate ourselves more and to educate our families who are not part of the most educated generations in history. So it's up to us. It's our responsibility to continue on our knowledge, continue on our family's history. So go for it. Empower yourself. So I think I want to be conscious of time. So I think that's all the time that I have.
Thank you for joining us.
Hmm.
Really appreciate it. We look forward to having more sessions. I think um, it was a really good presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, I forgot. Oh, I stopped. Why did I stop sharing? Knowing good and well, I had one last slide because folks really love this last slide that I show because it really shows. I have a cat at home that's my roommate. She is my everything, and so everyone really loves when I show her off. So this is her. Her name is Ayasha. Is Chippewa for little one. So this is my information. If you ever want to reach out, connect. I'm all about connections. My degree, again, is in student support or in higher education student affairs. So I really work with college students adding or giving additional support. So Aya and I say, y'all, it's times are tough right now, but history has its eyes on us. We're making history every day, including today, a historical event happened. So stay updated, friends.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, that's it. And so I'll just log off. But again, feel free to reach out if you ever need anything. Y'all have a good one
Sure.
now.
Yes, we'll be following up with you very soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
See ya.